Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you for this special edition live stream playthrough. It's a sneak peek of sorts. It's actually, I've got to update my little 3-minute countdown because I think I've got designer interviews, pre-order news, new game announcements. I don't say anything, however, about a live stream gameplay or a preview of a game. So this is something completely different, something we're excited to do to give you some insights into some new games under development at Compass Games. And if you like the idea, we'll work on the format, look to improve it, and yeah, we'd love to make this available to you all. So I want to welcome everybody on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks for joining us live today. One thing you'll notice also if you're on YouTube is we have an upgraded service. The actual service provider now provides HD 1080i. So a better resolution if you're on YouTube. For Facebook, it is still 720 streaming, but should be good enough quality for HD. It's good to see War Steve and Tom D on YouTube. So thanks for chiming in to say hello. And again, it's going to be a really simple format tonight. So again, it was a pleasure to have Christopher Davis on a little over a month ago. We did a Compass Games Live episode 35 featuring Chris and talking about his Operation Storm 333. And it was his idea, which is a great idea, is let's do a live stream session showing you playtest components, the game actually in development, where Chris is going to actually walk you through a sample playing of the game, or at least a portion of the game, to give you a better idea of how the game flows. And Chris will talk about, obviously, where it is with development. It's really a chance for you to ask clarifying questions or to probe Chris. As Chris shows the game, I'm going to take your questions and feedback, and I'll try to display that communication to him so he knows what's happening. So without further ado, I want to invite Chris back in. So Chris, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now. So there we go. We'll have to be nice to you because we are going to have you talking the whole time. I don't have to talk this time so much.
Yeah, it must feel like a relief. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here again. And just to let everybody know, Chris also did a No Enemies Here interview with Dan Picaldi a few weeks ago. So if you do a YouTube search for obviously under Chris Davis or Christopher Davis, but you can also do it under No Enemies Here or Compass Games Live, you'll find some hits for some interviews with Chris. So again, the interview was great. Please check out episode 35 about Operation Storm 333, and that's what I think that's what we're gonna be focusing on tonight. We're gonna actually go through, talk about the design, where it's at, and have you literally walk through a sample gameplay, show how the game is played, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll take it from here. And
Yep,
so Operation Storm, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a solitaire design, and it's meant to depict the Soviet coup in Afghanistan that kicked off the Soviet invasion of the country in December of 1979. And so there's really two parts to it, and I'll walk everyone through the module in both phases, and I will play a little bit of the first phase of the game, and then also give you a sample of the tactical piece of the missions and how the combat's supposed to play out. So without any further delay, I'll bring up the Vasral module, and just keep in mind it's all prototype playtesting stuff right now. So the art is, the art is what it is, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Great. Yeah, go ahead and share your screen, Chris. Once I see it, I'm gonna go ahead and I've got the Oz behind the curtain controls here to bring up your screen. So I'm going to bring it up now, and yeah, I'll let you take it away from here, Chris. So thank you so much for doing this again. Somebody had posted, hopefully no concern here. Tom said on YouTube he thought he had lost the stream, so maybe there's a hiccup. We'll see what happens. Maybe if somebody's on Facebook or YouTube right now, they can just ping us with a message. But I do see there's people online right now. So I can see that we do have quite a few people that have joined. So hopefully everything's okay. It's all good. Tom just gave the okay signal. So let's go ahead and proceed, Chris. Go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, so first I'll just walk everyone through what you're looking at here. So as mentioned, it's played in 2 phases. The first phase is the planning phase. And in that phase, the player uses their key leaders to essentially plan the mission. And what you're looking at here is the planning board on how all of that will work. So of course you have your, your turn track, your turn marker up here. This tells you how many turns you have left. This marker, the OS333 marker, is when the operation is supposed to start. And there are events that can move this left or right. going further down, operational support. So each power ministry, so like the KGB, the Army, the GRU, has varying levels of support of the mission, and depending on that level of support is the number of units you can draw each turn, essentially, and assign. And then the intelligence and alert levels of each target. The intelligence will tell you the type of units that are there. So you can reveal masked units before the mission starts, and the alert level is how many additional enemy units are added. And so some of the stuff is still being worked out as far as like balance of how many units are drawn each turn or available on each map through the playtesting. But essentially, that's how it works conceptually. And here in the center, you can see the assembly area. So there's 8 target missions, and there's a tactical map up here associated with each one where you actually execute the missions, and I'll show you that next. And so during this phase, what you're doing is you're assigning units and leaders, as you can see here, to each assembly area before the game proceeds to the next phase. And then here in the center, these are actually leaders that are physically in the country, and they can do different actions that affect the intelligence and alert levels, or undertake special tasks that might affect the mission before you undertake them. And then there's several different kinds of cards. There's event cards that are pulled each turn, which you'll see shortly. Operational cards, which are provide you some flexibility in gameplay, and then tactics cards, which are used during the actual combat. And then the big piece, of course, are the key leaders. So they're leaders for every. There's leaders for every service. So you have KGB leaders, GRU leaders, Army leaders, and then each leader has a skill. So the skill here is a doctor. This one's a general. Up here, he is Spetsnaz, and they can do different things. There's, of course, for those of you familiar with Vassal, there's different tabs, rolling die, of course, the card decks, the key leader tables, Afghan units, charts, of course, on how to actually play the game. So these are different key leader tasks that can be undertaken, and so forth. And you'll see some of these as we play through. And then there's the sequence of play, of course, and the casualties box, where all your losses and enemy losses will go, and then all the mission maps. And the mission maps are all point-to-point maps. Again, this is all playtesting stuff, but this is the mission I'll be showing you shortly. And so that's essentially what the module looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play through like 3 to 5 turns of this and walk through different options and features, and then we'll switch over to the tactical mission.
And
I do want to,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to add here. So just for everybody, so now that you see, Chris actually almost went through a components walkthrough of sorts. So if you think from a Compass perspective, what we do is Chris gives us the overall footprint of the design as far as what's needed. So obviously you've got game counters, but there's going to be multiple displays, not just player aid cards, but there's operation maps. There's different maps, there's tactical, etc. So you can get an idea already that as we work with Chris on his design and understand the parameters of what he's going to need from a production standpoint, there's going to be several, I'd call them maps, for lack of a better term. You're going to see a lot of cards. There's going to be a deck of cards. What's the total number of cards right now, Chris? You think, you know, it's around plus 100? Is it plus 100?
I think so.
Because there's 3 different types. Yeah, there's the events, operations, and tactics. So just so you guys know, from a publisher standpoint, we obviously look at the footprint of the game. And the reason we do that is if it's like a single map game, that tells us we have a chance to actually, we're going to do the printing overseas where it's going to be a mounted map, etc. In this case, I'm not sure exactly because it looks like the displays can all be small in size. So probably depends on the count. Maybe we could go mounted. Possibly, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I want to share just a little bit from the Compass perspective when we're looking at this. You know, we look at holistically what's the overall component mix, and then Chris helps drive through development. You know, what's the best way? I think you showed some displays that were through the menu bar that actually could probably be on the map itself. I think it was eliminated. I don't know if it was eliminated units or there was something that was.
Yeah, there's a couple of these. There's
so there's things like that. So things, so things like that will either be on cards or maybe they're integrated on the maps. You know, we'll figure out where these things end up for sure. So I'll turn it back over to you, and I'll be watching questions and comments for everybody on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, thanks, John. And also, I do want to give a shout out, to John for doing this and trying something new as far as like walkthrough, and then also to Kevin Conway. I saw his little Discord thing pop up here, but he's been instrumental in helping me actually build some of these Vashel modules. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him too. All right, so without further ado, we'll go forward. And as you saw in the sequence of play here, a turn consists of several different stages. The first one is always a random event. And I love random events just because it adds a little bit of flavor and unpredictability to a game. So what you'll do here is you'll just draw a card, and there's no modifying the random event or order or anything like that. You just draw the top one, and whatever it says is what you do. So this one's a bad one, unfortunately. So the operational support of the KGB actually goes down a level. And what that will mean is when it comes to the key leader actions, I'll actually be able to draw less units during each turn.
What does that event reflect in real terms, you think? What's happening behind the scenes? How would you describe that event?
Yeah, so that one reflects, skepticism for this kind of operation among senior officers who are responsible for planning it. So it might be, they're skeptical about the resourcing or the timing or something else about it. And so there's a hesitation to, commit fully to the planning process.
Thanks for that explanation.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of cards like that. There's also cards that will increase the different support levels or affect intelligence or alert levels in different ways. But the player also has the option using the key leaders, which you'll see here in a bit, to change all that. So once that's complete, just going down the sequence of play, you'll draw operational cards. So that number is determined by the level of support from the Politburo.
Oh, hey, Chris, could you do me a favor? There's a little dialogue at the bottom of your screen. You can hide it.
Oh, yeah.
Just to give it. There you go. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Shoot.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go. All right. And so the support level of the Politburo, which for those of you unfamiliar with the Soviet system of government, Politburo was essentially the highest decision-making body, and in some ways effectively really the only decision-making body. That determines the number of operational cards you get. And that's important because these cards are very flexible. They can bring new leaders on the board. They can affect almost any aspect of the game in this phase and in the next phase. So you want to collect as many of those as you can get. With this level of support, and I believe that's in the chart here. No, it's not. But at this level of support, you can draw. Basically, you draw 4 cards and you select one. Some of them just have you draw a card. Like as it gets lower, you just draw a random card, and that's what you get. And then when it's at full, you can actually draw 2 cards and select 2 cards.
How's the play balance looking? War Steve on YouTube's asking a question about play balance for some of the scenarios.
Yeah, so that's one thing that needs to be fleshed out with more play testing, because what I don't want to happen is missions being too difficult because you can't get enough troops, but also missions being too easy because you're flooding the board with it. And that's really going to come down to essentially a law of averages of play testing as much as possible. And it's as a one-man show, it's hard to do as much play testing as I'd like. So I definitely invite anybody who who's interested in play testing.
Yeah.
Give it a shot. If you want to try it once, 100 times. What I'm aiming for is the 100 play tests. So if it's one person doing 100 tests or 100 people doing one test, that's kind of where I'm comfortable at. But we'll see.
There you go. Chris's rule of 100. It's got a nice little ring to it.
Yeah.
And then can you remind me, can you see the question? Because you only have a single screen. Do you see the question when I post it, or you only see Vassal?
I only see Vassal.
Okay, so the question from Steve was, can the Russians win? Was his question.
So what I am looking to do, and this part isn't fully fleshed out yet. So each mission will have different victory conditions or objectives that you'll have to accomplish, and they'll have a conditional effect of whether or not you accomplish them on the other missions. So the sequence of missions are also important, and I didn't highlight that earlier, but right here is the op sequence. And so before you undertake the missions, you'll set all of these out, and that's the order you'll conduct your missions. And there's events that might force you to do a mission earlier than you anticipated. And then after you complete all those missions, there's going to be a debriefing manual, very much inspired by Enemy Coast Ahead's Doolittle raid. And there's going to be a victory point charts for kind of each section that tells you where you succeeded and where you fell short. So if you take too many key leader losses, there might be, the effects might be much more negative as far as like the KGB or the general staff is concerned. But if you manage to capture all of your objectives, the military effect might be higher. So I'm still working the contours of that piece out right now.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay. And as I said, so with this one, you get to pick one card. So all the cards can be discarded. If there's a card you don't like, all the cards can be discarded to draw a new key leader at any time. And you draw them randomly unless it tells you you can select one. Or you can just choose one of these. And I'll just choose choose this. Actually, can't do that one. So there's some that are marked as special tasks, and these are key events that actually happened in the mission, leading up to the mission, that might have affected the outcome of the operation. So there might be one of them is, as you can see here, an officer exchange dinner. Another one is an assassination attempt against the Afghan president. And there's conditions that you have to meet to attempt these. So I'm not going to pick that one. And just for the sake of moving this along, I'll just pick this one here.
The dinner card was interesting because I know his soup was poisoned.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting tie-in because I literally poisoned his soup for, I guess, dinner. So there's the dinner card, right?
Yeah, and the Soviet doctors assigned to his medical team actually saved his life, or at least were part of that life-saving process.
Yeah.
So it just shows you also the difficulty in planning something like this when different arms of the government aren't coordinating with each other. Yeah. So actually looking at this card, even though I picked it, I can't. Let's see, it's number 6. Yeah, I can't actually use it. So I'm just going to discard it and draw a new leader, and I'll just draw another KGB leader. And as you can see, there's a lot of features in the module to help facilitate play. As the little movement marker, there's different options on here. And as I mentioned earlier, thanks to Kevin for putting all this together for me. So new leaders come out here, they go to the available leaders pool, and you can do different things with them. So leaders already assigned to an assembly area, you can use them to draw a new tactics card, which can be used during the mission. So I'll just draw a tactics card so you can just see what those are like. And they allow you to do different things. And these will become more clear once you see how the tactical piece plays out. So I'll draw a card with him. So he's activated, he's done for the turn. These other units, you could draw new units to the board, or you can add tactical weapons to them. So a PKM, grenade launcher, things like that. And that's all built into the system here.
Some quick questions for you, Chris.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we've got some good questions coming in. A question from over on Facebook, Eagle in the Sun. Were you able to interview any of the troops involved in this operation?
No, I have not, but there is and I'll pull it up. Remind me to pull it up after we're done with the walkthrough. But there is a after action review, I guess, written by an American scholar who's an expert on Russian military stuff. He wrote about this entire operation, and a lot of the gameplay decisions are based on his write-up, since there's not a lot of English language resources available about the operation.
Great. And then Kenneth T is asking over on YouTube, wasn't Taraki suffocated with a pillow? His question is.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but at the time of the Soviet attack, Amin was the president, and a big thing the Soviets feared was that he so mismanaged the country that they feared he was actually a CIA plant to destabilize Afghanistan.
There you go.
So there's a lot of paranoia going around, and
Sure.
on all sides there.
All righty.
Yeah,
I will let you continue. Thanks for
yeah.
thanks for the questions again. And we'll bring them in at various times. I'll probably space them out a little bit just to give you a chance to get through the playthrough a little bit quicker.
Yeah, no problem. And so each leader can do one action during this phase. So the leaders here in the middle, you can either reassign them to a different location where they can do different things, or you can have them try to increase the intel level or decrease the alert level. And this is all, and they're all done with one die. All basically the same table. I know this table is called the advocate for support table, but it's all functions the same way. So essentially, this leader here at the Central Army Corps headquarters, I'm going to attempt to decrease the alert or increase the intelligence level right here. And essentially, there's no bonuses for his roll. So you roll a 1d6. And basically, I have to get let's see, I'm going to sum, so I have to get a 5 or higher. And he gets a 1. And the 1 is always a modified or unmodified 1 is always a failure. So there's always a decrease. So he really bungled his job there, which is going to make collecting intelligence at that location harder. So then Alexiev at the palace is also going to do the same thing. And he rolls a 5, and the palace is also at, so the palace goes up too. So as I mentioned, what this will do is when the mission is actually executed, enemy units are drawn on the board face down, and then you can select a certain number based on the intel level to turn face up, so you know what you're facing before the battle starts. And then these other leaders, you can assign them here into the box, or you can have him try to increase the support levels. So generals, as you can see here, Drozdov's a KGB general, so he gets a modifier to help increase the Politburo. So I'll do that for him. Oops, don't want to delete him just yet. And he gets a 3, which falls short of what he needs to do. Actually, with the 4, no, yeah, still falls short. Because he needs to get a 6. And then, so he's done. And then we'll assign Boranov to a assembly area. So in the next turn, he can start moving units. And then we'll send Piliev to Afghanistan. So leaders that you send to Afghanistan don't arrive right away. They go through this movement box, essentially, which is then mobilizing and then getting sent to the country. So it takes a few turns for a leader to arrive in country. So that's one turn, and then when that's done, you move on to the next turn. And so I'll play through it one or two more turns, and then we'll go over to a mission.
So how do you feel about your first turn, how it went? You obviously rolled a 1, which wasn't good. It hurt you, actually. Did you get everybody placed where you wanted? It looks like, the general has a benefit for
so generally speaking, you want to try to get as many key leaders in place early on as possible, because then that'll open up as many more options for you down the road. Because as I said, you can only do one action with a leader per turn, and then at least using a percentage of those to try to increase your support level. And you don't have enough leaders to do everything. So, and then there's also actions that might force you to take leaders off the board.
And you said the event card was actually hurt you. I think you said the event card you drew for turn 1 was non-beneficial to your cause, right? To your mission.
Yep.
Okay. And then turn 2.
There's more event cards than there are turns. So every game, there should be a different mix of event cards.
Gotcha. Alrighty, so, on to turn 2.
All right, so this one's a bad one too.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So every target, you lose a certain amount of intel. So this one is essentially reflecting the friction between the Soviet and Afghan governments, and the Afghan armies decided to cancel their joint meetings,
Mm.
and so um, the Soviet officers on the ground aren't able to engage their counterparts and collect info on them as much as they would like. So you just roll one die and divide that in half, and that's how much intel you lose, and that's a lot. So that's going to be basically wipes out all the intel um, that was collected in the country up to that point. So we're in a bad spot right now, but it's early on, and you know, just gotta keep moving forward. So
Yeah, no intel sounds pretty bad, actually.
yeah,
That doesn't
exactly.
sound like it's just a minor issue for your mission to have like zero. It's not even at low anymore. So that
Yeah,
cannot
because
be a good thing.
each mission will have a random set of. You'll see on the maps here. There's initially a setup for each mission for units, enemy units, but I'm actually going to discard that and go more with a random placement. And so it's always going to be a question of what mix of units are going to be on the board, because there's some standard units, there's some bodyguard
Right.
elite units, and there's also civilians who don't have any at least combat impact on the ground, but you get penalized if you harm them during the operations.
At this early stage, are you going to be focused on getting the intel up starting turn 2? Is that like how high a priority is it for you, seeing intel dropping to nothing? How's that
Uh,
impact your future play at this point?
it won't be the highest priority, because the biggest priority is really getting the operational support level up right
Okay.
now, because that'll get you more cards and more units. So as you see, the general staff and the GRU support levels are at none. So I can't even draw, assign GRU units to the board yet. I'm still working on the max number of like hard count of units that you have available. So right now in
Okay.
Vassal, you can make 1,000, markers if you want, but there's going to be obviously a hard count of limit of how
Yeah.
many you can actually physically put on the board. And so the number of KGB units that you see here, um, there's not going to be enough to do every mission. So you're going to
Okay.
have to get support from the GRU and also from the Army, really the airborne forces, to get more units on the board. And both of
Alrighty.
those are at none. Yeah, so both of those are at none, and so you can't
Yep.
draw any of those right now. And you see here, these are the units that you can bring on the board per support level. And as you get more support, you can bring on more units, you can draw more cards, and
Yeah,
things
that's
like that.
critical. Obviously
Mhm.
critical. That's the lifeblood of your mission. Alrighty,
Yeah.
I'll take it away for turn 2 then. Yep.
Yep. So I'll clear all the action markers, and then we'll go again. So drew the event. So and then all the key leaders that are on the 4 teams will advance a space to get closer to deploying. And then, again, you just go through your key leaders on their actions. So Drostov's the only one available now. Or excuse me, you draw a support card, and because I'm still here at some, I can look at 4 cards and draw one. Um, so don't need any of these yet. So either of these could be good because they get more units on the board much quicker. This one I can't do yet because I don't have the support level for the KGB up yet. But this one, the conditions are apply, so at least I could get more units on the board.
What did the card say? I can't read them quite. Is there like a title on the card or what it
Yeah.
is?
So each card has a title. This one's military staffing,
Oh, there we go. Okay,
and yep.
thanks. Yep.
And, so this is saying the general staff support level is actually I can't do this one either. It's greater than low, not less than low. Um, so, but I can discard a card to bring one key leader on the board at any time. So I'll do that anyways. And I'll bring a army leader on the board because there are army generals and they might be able to help get that support level up. Let's see who we have here. And so Ryabchenko, he is a Soviet airborne general, so we'll use him for that. One thing I do want to say, during this phase, there is a potential loss condition. So if at the end of the turn, the Politburo support level is at none, then the mission is canceled and the game is over. So it does give you an opportunity to try to increase the support level if it does go to none, because there are events that might decrease it, and then also failed roles might decrease it. So it might be important to have key leaders available here in case that happens. All right, so we'll try that again. We'll roll for Drozov gets a +1, and it's a 1 again. So the bad luck continues. So
That's a fail, automatic failure. Yeah.
Yep,
Not
automatic
good.
fail.
Not
Yep.
good.
So I'm going to pass on using Rabichenko for that, because if I draw another 1, I don't have any leaders left to attempt to bring the Politburo support back up. So we'll try to use him on the GRU marker. And he gets a 4, so that the GRU marker comes up. And what that means is now the key leaders on the board here can recruit GRU units and bring them on the board. And I'll do that to show you the different kinds of units that are available. So you saw there's a Spetsnaz unit that are KGB. So those are represent like the Alpha and Zenith Special Forces teams. And then there are, for the VDV and for the GRU, there are fire groups and mobile groups, which have different stats. So at this level of support, as you see on the chart, I can bring on 1 or 2 GRU units. So I'll do that. I'll bring on a fire group and a mobile group. And so it's not reflected in the module yet, but the fire group can have essentially all of the tactical weapons attached, whereas a mobile group can have a limited amount attached. And you'll see at the bottom here, the left is their action number. That's how many actions they can take during the tactics phase. And the right number is the number of, is their combat value. And that's how many die they were rolled during combat. And then the green reflects they're in a low ready state, meaning more actions than combat. So they're ready to move, but you can change into a high ready state, which during the missions, which changes the number of activations they do, but increases their combat level. So that reflects the fact that they're moving slower, they're more prepared, they're expecting like immediate contact with the enemy as opposed to trying to move on the battlefield. So those are some of the tactical decisions you have to make. So we got 2 GRU units here, going to the Army General Staff, and then Karpukin. So instead of bringing a unit on the board, you can also, as I mentioned, bring weapons. So we'll add some tactical weapons to our Spetsnaz team here. And because it's a KGB unit and my support level for the KGB is some, I should be able to bring 2 weapons onto the board. I'll bring an RPG. So each weapon system also has its own benefits, which you'll see in the charts. And these are the different modifiers they'll have during combat. All right, I think that is all of the leaders on the board here. So we'll have them try to increase intelligence levels for their respective areas again and see what happens. So basically, as I mentioned, all the charts are here. So you just go back to the charts. He just needs a 3 or higher, so he's got a 50% chance, and he doesn't get it. And Alexiev has also a 50% chance. And he doesn't. He gets a 1 again. So a lot of bad rolls to start. So things aren't looking good for the first 2 turns. But that could always change. There's also different leaders that modify the results for each of these different rolls. So then when that turn's done, we move on to the next turn.
Or turn 3.
Yep, turn 3.
Turn 3.
Yep.
Quick question. Matthew Albring over on YouTube's asking, where's the pre-order page? He likes what he's seeing. So just to let you know, Matthew, I guess that's a Compass question. So yeah, we're going to do the pre-order page, but we're not quite there yet. We're giving Chris time as a designer to, again, he's looking for that rule of 100 playtest. So there's quite a bit he wants to do. And of course, we could always put a game up for pre-order that's still going through play testing, but we're just going to wait a little bit, let him flush it out a little bit more. And then, pre-order page, I fully expect we'll have the pre-order page up before end of the year for sure. Just to give you some expectations there, Matthew. So thanks for your question. And now we're on to turn 3. Stop the bad die rolling. Stop the bad die rolling, please.
Yeah, so I'll just play through one more turn real quick, and then I'll move on to the attack mission. So you start with pulling the event, bad weather Kabul. So planes aren't flying into the airport, so my key leaders aren't going to advance. The forward teams do not advance this turn, which again is another negative. It'll take them one more turn to get there. With operational support at low, instead of picking a card, I just draw a card, and that's the one I got to accept. So this one's actually not bad. There is a leader at the palace, and I can use that to increase the intel or decrease the alert level at the palace. But right now, this early, I think I want more leaders on the board. So I'm going to discard that and bring another leader on the board, and I'll bring a GRU leader on the board. And so he's a tactician. And so tacticians can draw 2 tactics cards instead of 1 for their actions. So I'll do that right now before assigning him anywhere. And yes, there are a limited amount of tanks and armored vehicles in the game. Even though this was mostly a special operations mission, the palace itself was defended by a tank unit. And part of the operation was to neutralize the crews before they can get to their armored vehicles. But that's no guarantee that will happen in the game. And also, some of the airborne forces used some armored fighting vehicles when they arrived at their target areas. And so I'll draw another tactics card and satchel charges. So some maps are marked with breach points, which are as you saw, the maps are point to point, so it allows alternate routes to different objective areas. And so you'll keep all your tactic cards in one pile until you move on to the next phase, and then you'll assign all the tactics cards to each mission. And so if you only have one satchel charges card, there's multiple. Some of these cards, there's multiple of them in the deck, but if you only have one card in your hand, you're going to have to make a decision of where you want to use that. And then again, we'll move. We'll attempt to increase the Politburo support, and it does increase back up. And we'll attempt to increase the GRU support again. So it needs going from low to some, it will need a 4. And then just roll a 4, gives me a D6, and he misses it by 1. But because it's not a 1, it stays where it's at, fortunately. So all those leaders are done. And then with the rest of the leaders, we can try again with intel. And the intel does increase for the Central Army Headquarters, which is in here somewhere. Oh, there it was. And then the intel for the palace stays at a 0. And then these last 2 leaders, so when you bring on new units, there's no restriction on where you can place the units. So even though the key leader is assigned to this box, you can put the leaders in other boxes. Because when you actually execute the missions, I'll just duplicate. I'll just bring on 2 more GRU units. When you actually execute the missions, you don't. You don't necessarily need key leaders. The key leaders provide you bonuses, but the units can operate without them. And so you can put the leaders or the new units wherever you like. And if you don't have enough leaders to go around, you can do a mission without them. As long as you have one unit on each mission, you can attempt that mission. And then with the other leader, we could bring 2 more KGB units on the board. And he won't actually, this one wouldn't have any weapons because you don't bring the weapons on with them. There's something you have to add separately. And so you can distribute them like that. And so you'll continue this process. You know, this is the first 3 turns. You'll continue this process until you get to this marker here. There is an event, and you see all the different event names here. There's a lot of different events that can happen. And some of these events might also move, you know, this marker in a variable direction. So it can move up to 3 spaces in either direction, depending on the die roll for that event card.
And just to recap, this is all the planning exercises. This is all what's going on behind the mission to prepare to launch the mission. This is the planning.
Yep. And then at the end of it, if this isn't already decided here, you'll decide the order of the missions you want to do. Because as I said, each one will have a condition, a completion condition. So if it's completed, it will have a positive effect on the subsequent missions. But if it's not completed, it'll have a negative effect. So that's something you got to balance out. And I'm still working out what those effects are going to be. So that'll come through with more playtesting to see what's balanced. So
well, that was a nice glimpse into the planning. A lot of things happened with bad event cards, some bad rolls. You were handicapped a bit, but no, it's interesting the decisions being made. I just want to give you a quick time check. We've got a little under 20 minutes left. I want to make sure I give you a heads up so you have plenty of time to get to the next thing you'd like to show everybody.
Yep. So we'll move on to the mission map here. So as you saw, there's multiple missions that you can conduct. They're all point-to-point maps. So each map will have a turn track. This part down here is going to go away because I reworked the initiative system, which I'll get to in a minute. And then they'll have assembly areas, and that they'll have 1 or more assembly areas, and that's where you can start your units. I've already have them pre-placed here for today's purposes. And then there's different terrain types, which are still being worked out, but essentially it comes down to interior and exterior spaces, and that's going to affect some of the combat variables, which you'll see over here. So, you know, attacking a unit that's indoors while you're outdoors, etc. will have different things. Excuse me. Additionally, as you see, all the Afghan units start face down, so you don't know where they're at. I'm still working out placement, like the procedure on how they get placed and where they get placed on the map. But there'll be a variable number of units, and they don't get revealed until they're activated or you're adjacent to them. And then there's also a chart for their activation, and you just go through these steps on what the Afghan units do. Initially, I had a chip pull system, which I really like chip systems, but I wanted to really streamline the solitaire focus administration of the Afghan stuff. So now it's a push your luck system. So after every activation, you'll roll a die, a 1D or 10, and if it's greater than the number of activations you have, or excuse me, if it's lower than the number of activations you have up to that point, then the Afghan units will go. So you get essentially you get a free first activation, and then any time after that, there's a chance that the Afghans will activate. Because all these leaders start in the same spot, a key leader in a space allows you to activate everyone in that space as opposed to each unit individually. So we'll just move everyone. As I mentioned, everyone has a action marker. So you see some of these guys can move 2, some can move 3. So we'll just move them 2 spaces, 1, 2. Oh, she'll probably take the units with him that he's leading. And then these guys will move into this building, 1, 2, and then this unit will move up to this building, 2 spaces.
Is the main objective here to clear the area of enemy, to secure the area? Is this around securing the perimeter, or not taking as many losses, or what's the? I don't want to go too deep into victory conditions or everything, but
yeah. So a lot of that's
what's the overall objective?
Yeah, a lot of that's still being worked out. As you see here, there's a minister counter. So most of the maps will have basically a senior Afghan official on the map that you'll have to kill or capture. And then there'll also be Some of the maps will have a star in the space here, and that would be like an objective area that needs to be occupied at some point.
Yeah.
And then there might be more conditional stuff. I'm still working that piece out. What I wanted to really focus on is just getting the combat system right.
Yep. Sure.
Because I want a system that kind of flows really smoothly and rapidly to give you a sense of like a fast, operation that's happening in a matter of, each turn is really a matter of minutes or seconds as opposed to, days or weeks.
Well, this is a good point about your design approach. So as a design approach, you can only have your focus in a few areas at a time. Right now, your focus is on the combat system, tooling it, testing it. You're not looking at the victory conditions yet necessarily, or how units get placed. So you are having to sort of make priority decisions. What do I want to get worked out first to a degree that I feel comfortable moving on to some other aspect of the game mechanics? And then, of course, you might revisit combat after something happens, or there could be. But it's interesting. I think this conversation is interesting because it shows you've sort of said, "Well, my focus right now is working out the combat system. There's other things that will come later, but right now it's about the combat mechanics, basically, right?"
Yep.
So, all right, sounds good.
And one thing that will also come later is the map layout as the play tests occur. I drew these maps really arbitrarily. There's only a couple of them that are based on the actual historical locations that I could actually find legitimate, reliable maps of a building layout. So a lot of these are really are going to be designed just for for game purposes, right? To make sure that it's actually enjoyable and fair and something useful and adds to the game. So as I mentioned, the key leaders, or excuse me, the push your luck system. So that was the first turn, essentially a free one. So there's the second action now, or second activation. Because all those units were in the same space, they all activated together, but now they're separate. So I can only activate one of these before I have to do the initiative roll for the Afghans. So I'll start with Vostraten's stack. So as I mentioned, key leaders can activate everyone in their stack as one activation. And so we don't know what Afghan unit is here. So there is and you'll see here on the chart, an action called observation. And basically that allows you to detect an Afghan unit or unmask an Afghan unit before you start shooting at it or it shoots at you. Because you can get penalized for arbitrarily killing civilians during the heat of battle. Or you also don't want to walk into a trap if it's a stronger unit than you expected. So this fire group here will spend one of its actions to do an observation. Basically, you roll a 10, die 1d10, and then you apply these modifiers. The target's in an indoor space, so it's a -3. So basically, they're up close and personal, so there's a good chance you're going to be able to ID what the unit is. So I roll a 1, and it's lower than this unit's combat value, so we get to see what it is. And it's a Afghan squad, so they have the similar values, activation values, and combat values, and that's still being worked out too as I streamline the Afghan activations. And then the fire group, that was their first action, so now they can do a second action because they have a 2 limit here, and they're going to actually shoot at them. They have a combat value of 3, and they have a PKM, so which is a light machine gun. And with the PKM, it's a -2 to their die, to one of their die. And so when you have the physical die, you'll pick which die it will be. Maybe we can also have like a special colored die or something for that. I don't know yet. But for the purposes of the module, it'll just be the first die as we go left to right on the results. So I'll pull up the multiple D10 thing here, if I can find it behind one of these screens. Oh, here it is. So he rolls 3 because he's got a combat value of 3. And it's a 6, 7, and 7. So one of them's a 5. And then what you'll do is you go to the combat chart here, and it walks you through exactly how the combat system works. So you roll the number of die, then you apply these modifiers. So it's a -2 to the first die, so it's really a 4, 7, 7, but then it's +2 to each dice because of their combat value. the defender's combat value, and then you just roll through these modifiers here. So I don't think any of these others apply yet. Nope. So really, I rolled it's back to a 6, 7, 7. And it's got to be less than the attacker's combat value to score a hit, or a 1, which, again, 1s are bad in my design here. A 1 can result in an immediate killed in action for any unit. But all of these are higher than a 3. So there's no hits on the target, but one of the numbers is an even number, so the target is suppressed. As you can see here, it's greater than or equal to the attacker's combat value, and so that's going to affect the oops, wrong button here. That's going to affect the Afghan unit's activation and movement, and also their combat. So the fire group with their PKM didn't do anything, but the mobile group can also shoot, and so you could do multiple actions such as movement. Each space counts as 1, but you can only do combat once per unit. So they will roll for combat also. Actually, before doing that, they'll switch their ready condition. So they'll have a higher ready condition.
Is it sequential when you have those multiple units there, or do you have to declare up front what they're all going to do before the first combat's resolved?
It's sequential. So you resolve all the actions for 1 unit before moving on to the next.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
So he's got a 3, so they'll roll a 3 also, but they don't have any special weapons or anything like that. So they'll roll 3 die here. It's a 4, 6, 6. So this will go, because it's 1 space away. Combat can also take place in the same space, so units can occupy the same space for close quarters combat, which you see here as a modifier as well. So I'm taking the penalty for not being in the same space as them. So it's really a 5, 5, 7, which again is not a hit. It doesn't even add to the suppression of the target. So my guys are shooting at them. They force their heads down, but nothing critical.
Is there any impact of multiple suppression results on a unit if they have multiple?
Yeah, so it's same with the hit. So it's all cumulative. So you see down here, all the combat results are cumulative. And then also same with, so some games, if a unit gets a light wound twice in a row, then you add a severe wound instead. And if they get a second severe wound, then they're killed in action. In this, it's not that way. You can get the number of wound levels and morale levels you get doesn't affect the severity or receiving a more severe one.
Okay.
You have to check for those separately.
Okay.
So you can potentially get a severe wound and a light wound on a target, and they each have different effects, as you can see here.
Okay, gotcha.
So as you see here, for example, an attacking unit that's severely wounded, it's a +1 to their combat for each wound that they have.
Okay. And then we just have markers. We'll have markers in the board game version, non-vassal version for tracking all that.
Yeah, so there's markers on here that are built onto the unit. So you can see if a light wound, you can add a severe wound and so forth. But yeah, so you could in theory have a unit that has 3 severe wounds, but is still fighting. They'll be really limited in their combat capabilities, but at least they're still active. And that's to reflect that historically a significant amount of the Soviet operators were actually wounded or severely wounded during the operation, but they were still successful nonetheless. So then after this, you would roll a 1d10 if it's a so I've had 2 activations. If it's a 1, and I've rolled a lot of 1s, if it's a 1, then the Afghans go, and it's a 1. So then the Afghans will go instead of activating another unit. And then you just go to the chart here to just go through this order, right?
Your die rolling just sucks tonight. Let me tell you.
It does.
You're just like hurting yourself in every possible way tonight. You're just.
But it's showing different parts of the game, which is good. So yeah, so I'll just run through this part the Afghan activation real quick, and then I'll call it a day. And
sounds good. Yeah, that'll be perfect. Perfect timing. Sounds good. Go for it.
So the first thing you'll do, all the Afghan units that are adjacent to a Soviet unit, you'll reveal them. So there's civilians there and more civilians in this building. So that's not a threat. And then any combat units that are now revealed will start moving if they can, but there's nothing that meets that condition. And then they'll conduct combat. So direct fires, basically they're shooting from one space to another. I'm still working on line of sight rules because, as you can see, there's interior and exterior spaces and rooms and things like that. So you won't be able to shoot at every target that that's revealed on the board. So the Afghan combat works the same way. So they got two combat value of 2. They'll roll 2 die, and they need a 2 or less. And still working out like on how they're targeting too. But essentially, there's only one space for them to target, so they'll roll 2 die for that. They do roll a 1, which means at least one of those units are going to be severely wounded or killed. So on a 1, you'll roll a second time, and then depending on what you get is the consequence, right? So it's a 7, so one of these units will be severely wounded. And right now, it's really just player choice, and I might keep it that way, but we'll see. So he's severely wounded. So the Afghans, they got a good shot back. And then the 7 doesn't apply because it's not a hit, and it's also the target's not suppressed. And then really that's it. There's no other Afghan activations right now. And so you would go back to activating the Soviet units, starting with the first activation, and then a second, a third, a fourth, until the Afghans go again. So are there any further questions?
Well, what I've just done here is I'm going to show this, and I know you can't see it right now, Chris. So Chris has recently posted, you'll see it on social media sites. He's inviting anybody that's interested in Operation STORM-333. There's, again, his rule of 100 is in play right now. So he's looking for 100 playtest sessions. So he is looking for active playtesters or anybody that's interested in learning more about the game, joining in discussions about the game. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Discord. We actually have a Discord channel for Consum World. Chris has a Discord channel. I believe, what's the title? The Jacobite. Can you remind me of the title of your Discord?
Jacobin Wargamer.
Yes. So what I've done is I've posted the link for everybody. I know you can't see it right now, Chris, but in the stream, anybody who'd like to join Chris's group over on Discord, which is a great little chat application, also has like sound, it has video sharing, sound channels, etc. There you go, Chris. You can see it now. So you can just join. You can copy. What I'll do is in the YouTube, we'll have the high def 1080 recording. I will add a link for those interested in joining. Will be in the description, in the YouTube description. So everybody will be able to just click on it, since I know it's a lot easier than trying to type out. So tomorrow we'll broadcast this recording, and everybody will be able to just click on that link. And that will actually take you right directly to Chris's Discord channel, where he's got playtest sessions going on for Operation STORM-333 and other discussions. And of course, other games you're working on as well.
Of course. And then feel free, anyone who joins that server, to reach out to me anytime if you've got any questions, comments, suggestions. I'm available for discussions at any time.
So to recap, so I think this was insightful. I mean, we got to learn a little bit about the system. We got to see the planning phase and going into a mission, and there's multiple missions, as you mentioned, as you've shown which sounds very interesting. So it goes very deep. We can see we just got a small tidbit of an example today. But for me personally, besides seeing the system, what I pay attention to, it's interesting to hear your comments about, here's what I'm still working on, or I like chip pull, or I like this, or something's based on this other system. I think you mentioned there was that GMT game you mentioned about the debriefing, I think, after the mission. So it's really, for me, what I think, and I hope others probably would agree, that it's really nice to sort of get into your mindset of where you are in the design phase, what you're focused on, what you're sort of tabling to the side for now, perhaps, to come to later. But so can you recap for us? So based on the mechanics, everything we've covered, can you do your best job, putting you on the spot, sort of recapping where your focus is right now on the design, the things you're tinkering with, testing out?
Yes. So the planning phase is 95% done. I just have to work out the balance of transitioning from the planning to the execution phase. The combat system is where I'm focused right now, to make sure that, one, fun, and then two, manageable, feasible as a solitaire system. And then the third piece after that will be cleaning up some of the maps to balance out the maps, and also the victory conditions for each mission and also for the game as a whole. And then so I feel like I'm starting to get to the final stretch here. So most of the core mechanics and systems are in place. And it's just a matter of stress testing them to see see what's broken.
Yeah, and then obviously you can see the game artist will have a big role in this in your game, because they're going to need to collaborate with you on the ergonomics of the map, what goes on the map, the card design. There's a lot of the typical design factors that go into this, and you've got multiple things going on. So I think we're going to want to obviously have a really capable artist working on every component, and that's going to be a big effort when we get there. That comes much later, but in the meantime, we'll have the pre-order page. We'll have an effort around getting the page description ready for the pre-order page, listing all the components, etc. we expect. And for Compass, games, we can always alter the components later. If something changes latter phases of playtesting development, I just had today for Gregory Smith's got a big game. And I forget the title now, but it's a World War I air game, solitaire, and we're adding a bunch of displays just based on some late playtesting. We decided we want to add more ergonomics, more helpful aids for players, so we can always adjust as we go. But again, just to remind everybody, so this will be available as a high def recording, available on YouTube tomorrow, Thursday the 6th. And also I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow evening, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll have our 5th episode of our Compass Games Town Hall meeting, and we will be giving away free stuff, at least one free game, as we do every Town Hall. So if you can join live tomorrow, you'll have a chance to win a free product from Compass Games, which is always exciting to do. So Chris, I want to thank you again. Great job. Again, this is a great introduction. Since the first interview we did, we really covered other things, but this really went deeper for the first time into your design and where you're at with the development. So as Andy says here, it looks cool. Keep it up. Thanks, Andy. So also, I'm looking for feedback from everybody. So obviously, you can see playtest components, which were quite good in Chris's case. They're going to be of varying types, and sometimes they might be hard to see because they're small, etc. But I'll be looking for feedback, and I know we'll get it over time. We'll try to do several of these in the future with designers. But yeah, if this is something you guys find helpful and interesting for titles you're interested in, sounds like this was a success for our first trial balloon. First trial run. This went very well. So again, thanks, Andy, for the thumbs up on that. And Chris, with that, I want to thank you again for your time tonight. And I will give you the last word before we go to send-off time.
Well, thanks everyone for participating in your questions, and thanks, John, also for hosting. I look forward to making this game available and putting it on people's tables and seeing what you guys think of it.
All righty. Well, thank you again, Chris. I know we'll see you again with all the various things you're working on, but this was a great trial run. Thanks for having the idea and the initiative to offer up doing a bit of a initial dive session in your game. Operation STORM-333, folks. Look for the pre-order coming later this year from Compass Games. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight, everybody. Bye-bye.